Let's get started. So one of the things we announced sort of maybe a month or so ago on the at the training camp we had in Leesburg was we finally got this CMS platform Office 64-bit compatible. So this has been something that's sort of been under development for quite some time. So Microsoft has decided to make the 64-bit installation of Office the default for any new installations, and that became more and more problematic for us. For several years now, Office has been a 64-bit environment, but it was optional. And so if you didn't need to use Excel files that were more than 2 gigabytes in size, or you didn't need to use some very, very, very large images in PowerPoint, there was really no point in having 64-bit. But maybe back last summer, Microsoft decided to change their default installation. So with Office 2019 and Office 365, whenever you do a full install, by default they started choosing 64-bit, and that wasn't compatible with our platform. So a lot of people struggled to have to uninstall it and then go to their state office of education and ask if they could get it uninstalled and reinstalled with a 32-bit option. So we finally got 64-bit compatibility. We haven't actually run a complete conference with it yet, but at the Leesburg training environment we had a few weeks ago, there were several people who brought 64-bit laptops and they used that new platform and it worked fine. And I've run a dozen or 2 dozen tests, just test data through and created a PowerPoint presentation, made Excel files, done the whole thing, and everything was 64-bit. So that's really good news. We are currently shipping both versions in the zip file. So any zip files I've sent to folks for their regional conference the past few weeks and ongoing, there will be both versions in that zip file. I'm going to pause this PowerPoint just for a second and show you what that looks like. So I've got this sample I just sent to Rhode Island. So this is on my zip drive or my USB drive. This is what a file would look like for your state conference. This is one I just sent to Rhode Island. Josh up there was ready for his, so I zipped the data and sent it to him. And if I just double click to open that up and see what's in the file, you can see we're shipping 2 versions of the Skills CMS platform now. Remember the way this thing works is you've got your data file. So here's the skills registration data. And then there are 2 versions of the program file. This one, skills registration _ program, that is now the 64-bit compatible version. And yet we're also shipping the older 32-bit version. This was from back in early January, is when we stopped making any enhancements or changes to that. So we still have that version. That was sort of, I will say that's sort of our last stable version we used for a bunch of fall conferences, I think we even used that version for an LSC last year. That's the sort of the final 32-bit version. Going forward, any new enhancements will be on the 64-bit version. Now, to be clear, all that means is this version will run in Office 64-bit. It does not mean you have to have Office 64-bit. It doesn't mean anything like that. It's just you can use Office 64-bit if you want. Let me show you one other thing if I can find it here. Skills CMS versions. No, this is my old version. So I need to get that version updated. The way that Office works, you can install the 32-bit version or you can install the 64-bit version. If you're using the 32-bit version, it will still work just fine with this newer version of the program. It's just before we got to this version, if you had installed 64-bit, it just wouldn't work. So that's kind of a big deal. We're really happy to have that flexibility out there. I think going forward, everything in the computing world is moving to 64-bit, and eventually, Microsoft may just move away from supporting the 32-bit entirely. But I think that will probably be quite a while before they can really do that. Any questions about that Office 64-bit compatibility thing? Does that sound okay? Good. Okay. Update on the training video. So let me just show you, if I log in here to the registration site, I'm going to log in as Oklahoma, where Darren, because we got Darren on the phone here. So if we screw something up, Darren will be mad at me. He can call me out on it. On the registration site here, when you first log in as any state director, of course, you've got all your icons there. But this show documentation links at the bottom. By default, we've hidden all that junk that was at the bottom to try and keep this on one screen. But if you click this show documentation links, it'll open up the bottom half of the screen with a whole bunch of links that we've just recently updated. So the training, the live training that we did in Leesburg a couple of weeks ago is now available as some YouTube videos. So if you click it, it'll stream that whole thing. It's pretty long. This first video is probably 4 hours long, and the second one is probably 2.5 hours long. So if you couldn't make it to Leesburg and you're curious what we talked about, those two links will run through that whole entire thing for you. Or if you were there with us in Leesburg and you just want to go back and review something and see what it was like, you can watch those videos there. We've also just released 3 new quick walkthrough videos of how the standard different kinds of contest scoring functionalities work. The default point ranked configuration of contests. This video just kind of quickly walks you through how the concept works for doing a normal, regular old point ranked SkillsCMS platform conference. So that works pretty well. I think those links may be pretty handy, may be helpful for you to figure out what's what. I'll also show you in a few minutes where some of those new contest scoring videos are linked right inside the SkillsCMS platform. We've also got a couple of links here that are from last year, some of the recordings. This is also where we'll put this new recording of today's session. Look at that, we did one exactly 1 year ago on February 4th, 2019. So that one's still there. And then we'll have this one posted up here as well when we're done with it for folks that might miss it today. So those are some new training videos you may get a lot of. The other thing I wanted to just mention, just sort of more of an advertisement than anything else. For those of you that haven't gotten maybe an email from Courtney recently about the Advisor of the Year applications platform, or maybe it's Taryn. I can't remember who's running it. Taryn or Courtney, one at the national office, is running this. The Advisor of the Year platform, you can configure that yourself and allow people to handle Advisor of the Year applications. Those are down here. If you go to Chapter Excellence, those are down at the bottom. I don't see any yet for Oklahoma. You as a state director can control whether you want to enable that or not enable that. And you do that on the state office screen. Right in here is a section where you can configure, do you want to allow Advisor of the Year applications or not? So if you're interested in that, that's how you can turn that on. There's some documentation. There's also a training video about exactly how all that works. You can find that training video here on our YouTube channel, this link here to the YouTube training channel. There's a link there about the Advisor of the Year process. So it's obviously a super popular video. We've had one person view it from the whole planet in the last month. So maybe not all that popular. But anyway, if you're curious about that one, you can watch that video and learn kind of how that process works. All right. So back in Leesburg, we sort of had some time towards the end of that session to get requests for features, new things that people wanted inside the SkillsCMS. I just want to touch on a few of those things that we've added in the past few weeks. The ability to generate contestant name badges online is now available. So they don't have the ability to do contestant numbers, obviously, because the contestant numbers don't happen until SkillsCMS. But if you're interested in printing name badges, those are available on the state reports menu. Under contest reports, you could potentially choose a particular event. Let me see if I can find one that's got some actual contests on it. Yeah, so here we've got the cabinet making event for this regional thing. There's a button here for contestant name tags. And so if you click that, it'll pop up a PDF document that shows, yep, here's our regional event and here's the names of the people. And it looks very much like a name tag would look for an observer or something, but it does have what contest they're in. So this may be handy for you if you're just interested in a quick way to run contestant name tag to show what contest people are in. Obviously, that's not going to work very well for running your actual conference because they don't have the contestant name, the numbers, they don't have all that stuff on it. But some folks were asking for that, so that's available A couple of other things here, we've added some new reports. We'll get into some of these reports here in a minute when we actually launch the SkillsUSA platform. But some contestant sign-in sheet changes, so they're sorted by team number. Some folks were struggling with teams of people. You know, Team A shows up and their names are spread out all over this 3-page sheet of paper, or 3-page report. So now the contestants are all grouped by team name. Some folks were interested in a top 10 placement report that didn't have the home address because they didn't want to share home address information with people, you know, that you were telling you who your winners are. So now there's a report of top 10 placements without the home address information. There's a single page award ceremony printout. You know, some people, the award ceremony printout used to have secondary and post-secondary on the same page, and some people were sure wanting that split. So now there's 2 versions of that. We'll look at where that is. And we've also added some double checks in the PowerPoint presentation process to avoid getting yourself in trouble with judge to a standard contests. So that you shouldn't ever see that if you don't really use judge to standard, but sometimes people can set something up as judge to standard and accidentally end up with 3 gold medalists, and you may want to avoid that. So the system will just watch for that and at least warn you about that. One of the other things that came up, some folks were asking, man, it'd sure be nice if there was a way to print a name badge just sort of quick and easy on a little label printer. We don't have this totally working yet, but the direction we're steering is to put this on a brother label printer. There's lots of different label printers out there. The trouble is we kind of need to standardize on one, and these are like 60, 70 bucks on Amazon, and a brother QL510. So what we're planning to do is have a little button. This concept already works for Skills for the national conference, but it's not really advertised anywhere. So we're working on getting that working. So if you have one of these brother printers, you can just click one little button and it'll spit out a little name badge right quick that you could, you know, cover some kid's name on their existing badge with. We'll walk through sort of where that would look. It's not available yet, but I'm hoping to have that ready in the next few weeks. All right, so the next thing I want to do is just a really quick walkthrough just to remind people of how to get this, what's in this zip package, how to configure it on your PC and get it set up so you can run some contests. And make sure, if anybody has any questions, we'll have a minute to walk over some of that. What do you need to use it? Obviously, it'll run on any Windows machine. If you have a Mac, you need to get Parallels. It'll work fine on a Mac if you just have the Parallels platform. This will include, I need to update this, 32-bit or 64-bit. You do need to have Microsoft Access, obviously. If you have Office 365, most Office 365 subscriptions include all these products, but you do have to have them installed locally. You know, Office 365 you can run over the web. None of this will work over the web. You do have to have a full local install to make it work right. Okay, so we talked earlier about what's in the zip file. We talked about how there's a couple of PowerPoint files, a couple of Excel files. Now we have the 3 Access databases, the new version, the old 32-bit version, and whatever data file you have. And as I always recommend, when you're going to set this thing up, you want to be sure you set it up on your C drive in a folder called SkillsUSA. There's too many ways to get yourself all balled up and confused if you try and install this anywhere else. If you put it on your desktop, if you put it in My Documents, you put it in OneDrive or anywhere else. It's not that it won't work, it's just far more complicated and difficult for you to get all the things connected the right place where they belong. I'm just going to real quickly walk through what this looks like. On my C drive, I already have a folder called SkillsUSA. If you didn't have this folder, you just create one. You know, you go to your PC, you look on your C drive, and you say, I want to make a new folder called SkillsUSA. And then when I email you the zip file, that zip file, as I was showing this Rhode Island one before, it'll have all these files in it. You'll just unzip these or extract those out to that folder. And it's super easy to do. In any Windows PC, you can just right-click there and choose, I want to, in my case, I'm using a 7-zip tool to do that, but you can also just right-click. There should be an option to extract to, and I want to extract them to my C drive. I'm going to tell it where I want them to go on drive C in the SkillsUSA folder and drop them off there. And what that'll do is end up putting all those files right in here. Now I've got several other files in mind, but the ones we care about are really just this skills registration program. And this is the one that contains the system, the program itself for how we run the SkillsUSA platform. I'm just going to double click on that guy and launch the system. And mine will come right up because I've already added this folder to my trusted locations. That is one of the other things that we end up needing to do. And there's a training video online on our YouTube channel for exactly how to do that. Let me just show you where that is. Yeah, I thought I had that open here. Maybe I don't. The videos on our YouTube channel. There's one about how to set up the SkillsUSA. So this little short video shows you exactly how to go through those steps for how to set that thing up. The key is to configure your options to include where that is located. Now I'm having trouble finding mine. Oh, I'm in PowerPoint, duh. Hold on, let me switch over here to Excel. Let me do Access File, Options. Here we go. And we have a Trust Center with Trust Center settings and trusted location. That's the key. So I've got on my C drive SkillsUSA as one of the trusted locations. If you don't have that, you just add it and set that folder up. That way Access knows exactly what you want to trust in that particular folder. Once you get in there, you should be in good shape to use everything the system's got to offer. This walks through those steps of doing a trust center. I don't know how much detail we want to walk through here about how to actually navigate this thing, how to run your contest. Let me just show you a couple of the things that we talked about earlier, maybe some of the features about this that we've added recently. On the contest screen, we've got all of our contestants that came from our database that we downloaded from online. You can choose whichever contest you want to work on here. One thing I've seen a couple of people get confused by is what happens if I needed to add at the last minute like a middle school program. Like I have this, I've got in here medical math. Let's see, I have medical math and I have a secondary one of it, but I don't have a middle school, and I want to have a medical math middle school program. How would I add that? That's what this add new button is for. You can add them online, of course, and that's generally what you'd want to do is add those contests on the website so that kids can register online. But if you forget or you realize after the fact, rat, some of these kids are supposed to be in middle school, not high school, you can always add a new one. Just a couple things to point out. Notice the code for this medical math is MM, and its distinct number is 146. I'm just going to show you where how those compare to other contests. If I go to the contest list, see how every contest has a code and a distinct number? So if I look at advertising design, its code is ADV and its distinct number is 103. This just comes from the national office. So when you're importing or when you're creating or cloning your events from the national office, we'll set all that up for you. But if you need to add your own, you'll need to set up a contest code and a distinct number for each division, so post-secondary and secondary. So if I want to add one for medical math, I need to be sure I duplicate whatever the high school one has. So I'm just going to kind of remember that. 146 and MM, I'm going to add a new one, and I can type in here, medical math, and this division is going to be middle school. 146 was the number, and MM was the code. And now I can save that and start having kids register for it. But it's important to keep that distinct number in medical math, whatever your code is, the same across those different contests. All right. So I've got a bunch of students in here. You remember how kind of this stuff works if you've not seen some of this before. One of the common things you'll end up needing to do is change someone's name. Let's say this Waddle kid comes up and says his name was misspelled. You can easily make that change by double clicking his name, edit to make the change, and then just type over it. It was just slightly misspelled. Save it. Editing things like that is very, very straightforward. When it comes to swapping a kid, if a student wants to do a drop, like one kid dropped and another kid wants to take his place, that's a little more complicated. So if in this case, Dakota Rail can't make it from Western Boone High School, she can't compete, I want to put a different student in that slot. What we always suggest is to drop the first student and add a second student. Drop and add. So I'm going to take Dakota and drop her simply by putting in, I'm going to have to edit here so I can change this. I'm going to put in actually let me not do her because she's in two contests. I don't want to mess her up. Let me try this other person, Hudson Sexton. Let me drop him. Yeah, he's just in one contest. So I edit him and I put in a drop date of today and save that. And when I save it, it'll tell me, yeah, it might impact an invoice. Any contest registrations have already been terminated. And now this person from this school, Sullivan High School, is no longer coming. When I close that down, I can see Hudson Sexton from Sullivan High School. He's still here. He's just got a drop date. So this is nice because I know that he was registered, but he's no longer registered. Well, how do I put his replacement in? Well, I'm going to add him right quick. I'm just going to go to the the registrant screen. Let me see what school that was. It was Sullivan High School. So I'm going to come here to the registrant screen, and I'm just going to add a new one. Tells me first and last name are required, of course. High school, student, Billy Idol, and I'm going to choose Sullivan High School, and he is a contestant. I can say that now it didn't force me to put all this stuff in here, but you probably want to put in the address and the date of birth, whatever you need to put in there. This isn't going to work for us here because I'm absolutely positive Billy Idol is not really a student at Sullivan High School, but the point of this validate button here in the middle is it will make a web service call out to the internet and see on the registration site, is there a student named Billy Idol at Sullivan High School in whatever state this is in? And it's saying, nope, I don't find this guy. That tells you if you allow him to compete at your state conference and he wins gold in whatever this was, diesel equipment, he wins gold in diesel equipment and you're ready to send him on a national, national is not going to find him as a member and they are not going to allow him to compete at national. So you want to use that button to make sure whatever school you put in, if you're doing a swap, make sure you hit that button to validate, is this kid a member or not? You can let him compete at your state if you want, but he will not be allowed to compete at national unless that button works and it comes back and says, yep, he really is there. So let me go ahead and put in a bit more information here. Any questions so far as I'm fleshing some of this out? All right, let me add him to diesel. There we go. Now if I look back here, I may have to switch to a different contest and come back to get it to refresh. Diesel, there's Billy Idol. That's the replacement for Hudson Sexton. All right. So swaps, replaces like that, fairly straightforward. I want to go ahead and I think we should be about ready to assign some contestant numbers here right quick. Let me go back and assign those contestant numbers. On the maintenance screen, I want to go to the contest function tab. Several new buttons and new features here will come to in a few minutes. Assign all contestant numbers. Yes, I want to assign them all. This is going to wipe them all out. Are you really sure you want to do that? Yes, I'm sure. I got to type the word proceed here to let it know that I'm really, really sure that I want to wipe them all out and start over. This is a state style system, meaning the contestant numbers will start at 1,000 and each kid will get their own unique number for each, and they won't use the same badge multiple times if they're in multiple things. Yes, I want to start at 1,000 for high school, 3,000 for middle school, 5,000 for high school, It'll go and assign them all, and I should be all set. Perfect. Now I may need to, I just realized that I've got some sample data in here from other contests I loaded, and all this data is kind of ruined now. I'm gonna have to wipe some of that out so I don't end up with this. I'm gonna end up with some problems in my data here in a few minutes if I'm not careful with that. I'm just gonna delete all that just real quick. Give me 1 second to clean all this old stuff out. I won't have any more of those. Perfect. Okay. All right. So I've got my contestant numbers assigned. I can go in here to my reports now and start firing off things like name badges. If I look at badges for state contestants, do I want to print the name badge, the event on each name? Yes, I do. So this is just you'll notice the difference between this name badge and the one we saw earlier on the website. Of course, the website doesn't have all these contestant numbers in it yet. So it's not a really valuable name tag to run for your conference event. But if you just need, names and what contest they're in, that thing we saw on the website works just fine. For your conference, though, you'll use these name tags where you bend them over in half, and the students compete with their numbers showing when they're on the floor and their name showing when they're just walking around, so people know who they are. A couple of other things you may want to print off here. There are a bunch of reports that you'll want to use in your contest packets. For example, contestant sign-in sheets. And this is the one I mentioned earlier. We had some requests in Leesburg to have this one sorted a different way. So now if I notice for a team event, it's sorted by team first. So A is first and then by last name, and then G is second. If I get to a contest that doesn't have teams, they all just come out alphabetically. So as my students walk into advertising design, they can look on this sheet and find their name and sign in. So yep, I'm really here. I'm the contestant. And if you get to one like Teamworks that's got a lot of teams on it, here was an example, whatever this was. Yeah, broadcast news. All of Team A is there, alphabetic by name, and then all of Team C is there, alphabetic by name. So that may help the kids coming in to find where their name is. Their name badge will say Team C. I look for Team C and put my name on. That'll also help your tech chairs to know, yep, all 4 kids from Team C are here, all 4 kids from Team A are there, we're ready to start the contest. Similar thing is available for your judges. We have a judge sign-in sheet, and this one is more for your judges to fill out and say who they are, where they're from, get their phone number. In case you want to send them a thank you note after, you can get their address if you want. Who your tech chair is. This one's kind of important because if you run into problems with your conference event and you need to call the tech chair and say, hey, there's something wrong with the scores, it's really good to have their cell phone number. And you get them to sign this document and give you that. You can call them up if you have a problem. A couple of these reports have been around for a while. I don't know if some of you may or may not have used these. This concept of a judge scoring sheet. If we look at some of these contests, remember how a contest will have, the scoring rules here that say, well, for automotive finish, they do 175 points for color tinting and 175 for spot refinish. Well, the judges may want a sheet of paper to walk around with and handwrite those scores on during the actual contest. And that's what this report is, contest judge scoring sheets. If I preview that one, it'll ask if I need to rebuild all the judge contestant numbers. Because we just assigned contestant numbers, we do need to do that. You don't have to do that every time you run this report, just the first time you run it. And then it'll ask us if we want to see the contestant names on the judge sheet. So depending on how you prefer to do it, some tech chairs or judges that, they don't want the judge to know who the kid is. They just want him to know his number. I'm going to say no to this, so I'll only see contestant numbers. And what I end up with, whoop, I said no to the wrong thing. Let me run it again. Preview, no, Do I want to see contestant names? No. Do I want to see the contestant numbers? And it says choose no for a completely blank score sheet. I don't want it to be completely blank. I do want to see the numbers. And so now you can see what I end up with is, if I go to that automotive refinishing one, there it is. Remember, color tinting, spot refinish, feather edge, and prime. It'll just give me something I can walk around with and judge each kid. Well, this kid 1140 got 72 points and 87 points and 106 points. So they can handwrite on this and then hand those to your scoring entry person or their tech chair, whoever's typing them into an Excel file. So those can be pretty handy. Probably lots of other reports in here that you'll want to include with your judge sheets. For example, a contestant listing by contest. This just tells the judge, here's who all you should expect to see. If you want to have the school name on there, it's just a slightly different report you can have broken out that way. Lots of different reports. What I would suggest is you put together a packet of information that's got 5 or 6 sheets of paper. I've seen some states do this really, really well, where they have a gold sheet of paper that's the judge sign-in sheet, and a green sheet of paper that's the student sign-in sheet, and a pink sheet of paper that's the list of contestants, and then maybe a white sheet of paper that's the judge sheets they would hand write. So, just use color coordinated paper to make it a little easier on yourself. Excuse me. There's 2 other reports I might suggest you look at. One is this contest winner manual rank. This is a really handy report to include with each of your judge packets, so they can hand you this when they come back and say, here's who I think, as the judge or the tech chair, here's who I think won first, second, and third. And that way they have a pretty good idea of who they think won. And if you run the Excel scorecard and come out with a completely different name, you can have that conversation right away, or call them and say, wait a minute, you said Tim, contestant number 1058, was gold, but that's not who we got as gold. What happened? And then they come back and realize, oh, sorry, we messed up the score. We didn't type it in right. We messed something up in the spreadsheet, whatever. But at least you get an idea what they think was first, second, and third. This can also be handy for some states that are in a real time crunch, right? You got 3 hours before your award ceremony and you don't have time to deal with the Excel scorecards. That's fine. Just have the judges bring you this sheet that says first, second, and third, and you can literally type first, second, and third into the manual rank score page, and you're done. Similar thing with a printable rank form. This is a similar kind of thing, but this just says for each contestant, where should they be? What was the rank? So if you don't have time to get the Excel scorecard, you can just have the judges fill in here, and how many points did each person get? And again, you just type in the total number of points for each contest. It can make it very, very quick and easy to get to some scores. All right. So we've done all that. We've printed the things out. We've handed in our packets. Our judges are all ready to go. The only other thing we need to do is create some Excel scorecards. On the maintenance screen, I think my USB stick is a different drive letter. Let me see. My USB stick is drive K, I think. Yeah, drive K is mine. So I want to make sure I change this on their maintenance. And how I got here, I just went to the maintenance screen and said, I need to change my disk letter to drive K. Now when I make an Excel file, it'll create it right out there. So if I go to, let's say, automotive refinishing, I got a bunch of those kids in that contest. I have some scoring rules there. I hit this little floppy disk button, and it will start creating the Excel file for automotive refinishing. Taking its sweet time to do it. There we go. Now if I go look at my K drive, I'll have automotive refinishing technology, S for secondary, and there's my Excel file. I can just use that to type in the scores for each contestant. I'm gonna copy and paste some of these, so I don't have to type a bunch in. Obviously, I got a whole bunch of ties there. All right, that'll give me something to work with. And then I can import that guy. It'll ask me which file I want. I want to look on my K drive and get automotive refinishing. It'll import that score. And now I've got my report of who the first, second, third place are. So pretty straightforward for importing those files. Some of you have used that before. If you don't want to use the Excel scorecard process, you can always use manual scoring. Under manual scoring, we first need to load contestants. And once they're loaded, now I can just use this screen to pick a particular contest, like carpentry, let's say, and just type in the total score that each kid got. Remember that one of those reports we saw had these two columns, total score and rank. So I can just put in the total score that each kid got, tabulate the winners, and now I can get a score report just for carpentry, gold, silver, and bronze. So if you don't want to deal with the Excel scorecard, this is a real quick and easy way to get your results in. And you can mix and match these. So if 50% of your judges like Excel and they brought a laptop and they know what they're doing and you give them the USB stick and they type it all in, that's great. If the other 50% of your judges say, I don't have a laptop, I don't want to use a computer, I just want to give you a sheet of paper, that's fine. They can just give you a sheet of paper with either these total scores or even the ranks. I can go to like dental assisting and say, I don't know what the scores are, I just want to type in the ranks. I chose enter ranks, and I can just put in 6th place, 4th place, 3rd place, 1st, 2nd, 5th, 7th, 8th. I can just put in that individual number for each person, and I get the same exact result. I get a gold, silver, and a bronze winner. I just don't have any scores. Obviously, these kids are going to be kind of disappointed when they go online to see how they did, and they're not going to get any data. But it is what it is. You got to your award ceremony, and that's what you're most concerned with. All right. Any questions so far about creating the Excel scorecards, entering the scores, entering manual scores, importing scores? That all seem pretty okay? You guys are a real quiet group. Everybody's on mute. You can always unmute yourself and ask a question. I'm gonna switch this data out here for a second because I don't want to lose. I've got a whole bunch of sample data here I've already typed in. I don't want to type it all in again. So let me go back here, replace my data file right quick. All right. So now I just kind of pretend like I've imported a whole bunch of scores. I've got scores in here for medical terminology and a whole bunch of other stuff. Now I want to run a couple reports to see if I'm getting close to ready to run my award presentation or not. Under reports, there is a scoring category. And one of the most valuable ones is this one called Contests Missing Final Scores. And what this will tell you, of course, we've got a whole bunch of them, but this says these contests have a number of contestants in them. Architectural drafting has got 7 people, but I don't have any scores for it yet. And so this sort of becomes like a burn down chart during your conference. You can run this report anytime and see how many contests am I still waiting for. And hopefully if you run it and then 2 or 3 hours later you run it again and a couple hours later you run it again, this should get smaller and smaller and smaller. Right now I've got 2 pages for 32 contests that I'm waiting on. Ideally, I'll get this down to 2 or 3 contests, and then I'll just be calling those tech chairs saying, hey, why haven't you brought in the cosmetology results where you're the last one we're waiting for to get ready for our award presentation? So this gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Obviously, we're not going to go through and load all those. I've got at least enough in here to try this with. But that's one you definitely want to run before you generate your PowerPoint presentation, and that needs to come back empty. You don't want to have any results on that one. And then I should be ready to generate my PowerPoint presentation. So one of the things you'll want to do before you generate your PowerPoint presentation is make sure your award sequence is set. This award sequence button here, or the report itself, shows you what sequence the contests are going to come out in already. It may be blank when you first run it because we typically don't ship it with one. You can randomize or set that sequence so that whatever you like, your random, alphabetic, by division, or by category. I'm just going to do it by random. Reassign the sequence, and now I'll have a slightly different sequence. So American Spirit is first, whereas before Auto Something was first. So you can reassign that sequence for everyone. This is just the order that they will come out in. And remember, if you don't like this order, if there's something you don't like you look down at it and think, man, I cannot possibly have carpentry come out fourth because that's my most popular contest, and I'll have so many kids get up and walk out as soon as carpentry is called. You can adjust this sequence number from 270, maybe change it to something way down here after like humanoid robotics. All I have to do is change that number from 270 to, let's say, 1475, and it would come out between these two, right? How would I do that? Well, if I go to the contest list and I find carpentry, carpentry is currently number 270, right? That's the award sequence number. I just want to change it to, I think we said 1475 maybe. I'm going to change both of those, secondary and post-secondary. So carpentry comes out together at 1475. And now when I go back and re-look at, I don't want to re-randomize it. I don't want to reassign it. I just want to look at the score report, the sequence report. And now I'll see, hey, look, carpentry is no longer number 4. It's moved way down here. So you can adjust the sequence. What I always suggest is randomize it or alphabetize it, whatever you prefer, and then tweak it. Just make some adjustments by moving those up and down by changing that number to whatever you'd like. And then that should be all there is to it. I'm going to come back over to my PowerPoint deck that we were kind of walking through here and close this so I don't have PowerPoint open. I can come back to it in a minute. And I'm just going to choose my template for which PowerPoint presentation I want on my C drive. This should have been one of the files that comes in the zip file. The Skills CMS template, wide or normal, depending on whether you're using a widescreen projector or a narrow screen projector. I'm going to choose wide, select that PowerPoint file, and generate the award presentation. And this is one of the new warnings that pops up that we've added here in the past few weeks. It's telling me I have 2 contests that are not using standard point ranked scores. This is okay. This is not a big deal. But if I'm using something like judge to standard, I better be darn sure I know what the heck I'm doing. Otherwise, if I use judge to standard and I don't set the standards correctly, I might not get a medal at all. And I've heard several complaints from people over the years, why was my cosmetology program didn't get awarded? Well, it's because somebody messed around with the contest scoring standards and chose judge to standard or preliminary and didn't do it right. And so this just warns you, be sure you know what you're doing here. And I've got a report that tells me you can run this problem report called contests that are not point ranked for details. Click yes to confirm you verified. I'm not sure, this makes me nervous. I want to go verify that. So I'm going to say no. And then I want to go over here and look at that problem report that it mentioned. It said a problem report called contests not, what was it called? Contests. Dang it, now I forgot what it was called. Problems, contests. Hold on a minute, I can't remember what it was called now. Contests not point ranked. There must be a problem with this report. Contests, problem, contests. Well, somehow that report doesn't exist. I know I made that report. Contests. Ah, there it is. Contests not point ranked. There must be something wrong with how that said. There it is. Contests. Oh, it's probably because it's capital S. I got to fix it. I'll fix that and release a new one. But anyway, contests not point ranked. There we go. So this tells me advertising design has 15 people and it's going to get 6 medals. Medical terminology has 9 people and it's only going to get 2 medals. So this just tells me you may want to double check and see what's going on with those particular contests. Why are they on this report? Let me go look. Advertising design and medical terminology. Advertising design. See, it's set up to use preliminaries. So as long as I did that right, as long as I know how to use the preliminary thing, I can figure that out. And this is one of the other things I wanted to mention earlier. I said there were some new videos. We've got some video walkthroughs of how to use point ranked, how to use preliminaries, and how to use judge to standard. So if you're not quite sure what the heck any of that means, just go watch these videos and it'll tell you exactly how those features work. Advertising design, I'm okay with that. The other one was medical terminology, I think. Medical terminology, yeah. So medical terminology, for whatever reason, notice it was set to judge to standard. And the standards are set like this. And by looking at this, I'm guessing the students did terribly. And so the judge came to me and said, I don't want to give a gold medal. Let's go check and see. I'm almost positive that's what it was. If I look at medical terminology, the score report, yeah, see how bad they did? They didn't get 50% of the questions right. The students didn't do very well. And so the tech chair came to me and said, hey, we don't want to give a gold medal to this kid from this South Bend school because he did so terrible. We don't want him to go to nationals. So in order to do that, to prevent giving a gold but still give silver and bronze, you can configure the contest such that it is judged to a standard, and then configure the standards so that you have to get 500 points to get gold, and that kid got 499, so he doesn't get gold, he gets silver instead. So that's why those two contests were configured a little bit differently. It's just that report, that message was warning me, hey, make sure you know what you're doing. Because the last thing you want is to get there, on stage and you call medical terminology and it says silver and bronze. Like, wait a minute, where's the gold medalist? Well, you configured the system not to award a gold medal, and that's what this warning's telling me about. I'm okay with that. I looked at it, I double checked, and I said, yep, I realize that I have those two contests that I'm doing something special with. I'm fine with that. I'm going to confirm that I know what I'm doing here and it's okay to proceed. And then it's saying, are you sure you're ready to do this? You verified your scores, you verified the winners, you ran everything you wanted to run. Yep, I'm ready to go. So now it'll go launch PowerPoint. It'll start making my slides and cramming in the winners and changing the colors and fonts and fixing everything up so it looks good. And I'll just wait patiently. I heard that beep, and that beep tells me, hey, it's done. Now I can look at my PowerPoint deck and see that I have photography, childhood education. Everything looks good. This is exactly what I was hoping for. Perfect. All right, so there it is. I'm not going to bother saving that. Not even 1 hour, in 50 minutes, we've gone through the whole process of loading up the system, getting some contests created, assigning contestant numbers, making some changes, doing some manual scoring, doing some Excel scorecards, and generating a PowerPoint presentation. We made really good progress there. And that leaves us 1 whole hour to talk about questions and ideas and other enhancements you might want. Let me see if I can find my PowerPoint here. Talked about all that. Registration changes. We talked about the validate button, name tags. We talked about scoring, manual scoring, and Excel scorecards. We talked about scoring rules. Okay. So there's 2 other things here that I want to at least introduce the concepts to you to help you understand what options there are, and then we may have time to talk about questions around some of these. This concept of online testing is more of an advanced concept where some states are wanting to use another platform for administering an online test. For example, they might use ClassMarker, they might use a Career Essential Assessment or some other platform to run a test that they want to actually incorporate those results in as the test for a particular skill area. So for example, if I go and look at, maybe welding has one of these. No, welding is not a good one. audio radio. This is a good one. So in the audio radio production contest, I've got that's a tricky one too. Well, conceptually anyway, we'll use audio radio as an example. Let me find another one because I hate to use that one because there's one bit of complication around teams that you may not like. How many we got here? Criminal justice. Yeah, this one, criminal justice. So in criminal justice, if I look at the scoring rules, I have a report writing exercise, an observation. I may want to have an actual written test here. So you have to, oh, here it is. I already have one actually. It's called written exam. You get 100 points for a written exam. But let's say you want to administer that exam online, or you want to have them take the exam some other way, some other place where the tech chair may not have any idea what those results are. That's what this concept of an online test batch entry comes. Online test batch entry, and this button here will explain sort of how this works, what this means. Online and or professional test scores. We're talking about professional test scores in a minute, but online tests give you a way to configure an online test skill area and then either manually or with an Excel file load those results prior to importing your Excel scorecard. The key is, and it kind of describes it here, you first have to set up your online skill areas with something called, generally what we use is online test. If I go back here, I'll notice this criminal justice had a thing called written exam, but not one called online test. So what I want to do is change this to the word online test. Now the reason, I could use written exam like it had, but let me show you where that's configured. The system under maintenance has a setting here, the setting called, what is your online test label? And again, anytime you see the question mark, you can click it to get an explanation of what that means. The online test label says, what is the name of the online test scoring rubric you plan to use? I'm going to have an online test called exactly this, online space test. So any contest like this one, where I have the word online space test, I can use either some online system, or maybe it's not even an online system, maybe it's just a Scantron. I want to use a Scantron to take this online test. And you can do that with anything. So if I look at like childhood education, instead of written exam, I want to call it online test. See how I'm making those words line up? They have to be the same word. If I go look at maybe aesthetics, instead of written exam, I want to call it online test. What does that do for me? How does that help me by doing that? Well, once I've put that in here, I can click this button under, let me show you where I got here. From the main menu, I'm going to click professional test and online test batch entry. And I want to click button number 1 to load the contestants. What that does for me is it lets me see criminal justice. Remember, that's the one I just put that word in for online test. It preloads this that says, okay, well, what were the results for your online test? And I can either come in here and manually type them in, right? Or we have an option to import either from class marker or from some generic file. And this sort of shows you how that works. There's a video here you can click to watch and see exactly how it works. If I were to put together an Excel file that had these contestant numbers and these points, I can just import that with one click. So this is really great if you have a big contest with 100 contestants and they've all taken some online test. As long as you have their contestant numbers in this format with an Excel file, you can just import them real quick and easy. Let me do a similar thing for childhood education. Let me put the scores in. Whoops, that's too big. Now let me go make a scorecard for childhood education. I'm going to find the contest for childhood education. I've got some contestants. I've got my scoring rules. I'm going to make an Excel scorecard for it. Now, this Excel scorecard is going to have a row in it for the online test, but I've sort of explained to my tech chairs, my judges for childhood education, hey, the online test they took online, you're not going to get the results for it. You're not going to know how they did in the online test. It's not important. You do not have to put that result into this scorecard. We're going to do that for you. So the tech chairs, they don't have to worry about that. All they have to do is put in the rest of these results. They just leave this one totally blank, the online test. They don't even bother with it. They leave it totally blank. Let me put these in here, copy and paste some of them. All right, so in this case, let's see how, let me just put a couple more numbers in here so that they're significantly different. So my last place, 1244, that's my gold medal winner. 1244 is my gold medal winner, right? Let me save this dude. It tells me here contestant number 1241 is my, or 1244 is my gold medal winner. I'm going to close that down and then go and check one thing on that online test entry for childhood education. Notice 1244 didn't do very well on that test. Let's say he just really bombed the test. He just did a terrible, terrible job on the test. Some of these other guys did really, really well on the test. But in the Excel file, Ashley Kennedy was the gold medalist. Watch what happens when I import that scorecard now. Let me make sure it's not already there. Childhood education. I'm just going to clear that contest out. Import the scorecard. Choose childhood education. And it tells me, it appears there are 5 online or professional test batch scores entered for this contest. Do we want to append them to the scorecard? And it kind of warns you here, this would overwrite any online scores that had been entered into Excel. So if the judges had typed whatever they wanted into the Excel, that online test row, this is going to overwrite them with what we've typed in the scoring center. So I'm going to say, yes, I want to append those. Now when I look at my education, 1244 is no longer the gold medalist because, come on, he didn't do very well on that test. Remember Ashley? She did terrible on the test. She was gold, but she did so poorly on the test that it dropped her into bronze, 3rd place. So this whole concept of an online test gives you an ability to collect scores in some other system and merge them in with the Excel scorecards if that's something you're interested in doing. Now, the reason I bring that up, and the reason I wanted to walk through it is because of something, Darren, you mentioned to me a few weeks ago about the professional test. So one of the things we've been aggressively working on is a way to incorporate a similar kind of concept for professional development test, so that just exactly like we walked through the online test, you could do the same thing with a professional test that is a scoring rule that you might like to have added to every single contest, and it works the same exact way. Your judges don't need to bother knowing or having any idea what those online test scores are. You put those professional test scores into the CMS yourself, and it merges them the same way. It looks slightly different. I'm going to show you just a couple of things about it. If I look at my contests now, let me find one that, like community service, let's say. That's a terrible one because there's no contest. Let me just duplicate some scores from the LSC for that. Oops. I've got all these things for community service, but I don't have a row for the professional test. Same thing if I look at commercial baking. Got all these rules, but I have a written test, and maybe I change this to online test, right, because I want to use that feature. But I don't have anything to track my professional test. If I have decided that I want every single contest to have the professional test score as part of it, there's a feature now under maintenance that will do this for you automatically. Under maintenance, if I look at contest functions, there's a thing that says, I'd like to add a professional test scoring row to all my contests. What this means, the concept behind this is, if you plan to make every student take the SkillsUSA professional, used to be called the PDP test, you plan to make them take that professional test. And whatever score they get on that professional test, you actually want to incorporate into your scoring results. You can use this feature to do that. In the past, historically, you know, we've only used that on that professional development test as a tiebreaker, but it sounds like more states are moving towards it, and I believe the NLSC is also moving towards that professional test is going to be an actual score that will count on every student's score. And so when I click this button, it's going to ask me, that's okay, I have one contest with no, it's saying I have one contest with no scoring rules, so obviously it can't add them there. That's okay. This is just test data, but I don't care. It's going to say, do I want to add a scoring rule for the professional test to every single contest? Yes, I do. And it's going to ask me, what's the default maximum points? You know, do I want that professional test to be worth 50 points or 25 points or 100 points? I'm going to say I want it to be worth 50 points. And when I hit OK, it's going to add that to every single contest. Now, let me go look at where I was in the contest screen, what that did. If I look back at commercial baking, and I look at its scoring rules, notice there's now a new item called professional test. This wasn't here a minute ago. And in fact, this is on every single contest. Now, criminal justice, there it is. Culinary arts, there it is. It added it worth that 50 points on every test, every contest. Now, obviously, since I said 50, what did that do to my total possible on every contest? It basically added 50. This may be a hassle, right? You may have to go back and say, well, shoot. Maybe entree number 2, I want to have only be worth 100 points now to get that back to 1,000 points. Obviously, at NLSC, we're in the process of working through all this on the website. But for those of you that are struggling with this or anticipating struggling with this in your state conference coming up, we're trying to come up with a way to help you through this now. So maybe I say operator environment's only worth 20, so I can make this one have 50 and also get to 1,000 points, right? So I've added that professional test to every single contest. Now, if I go back and look at my professional and online test batch entry, remember a minute ago we typed in this stuff for criminal justice and we typed in this stuff for childhood education. This was just the online test. This is a specific test about childhood education, the skilled areas they need to know about childhood education. What we just talked about, though, is the professional test, the professional development test, which has nothing to do with childhood education. It's that very generic exam that has questions about how to be a professional in the workplace and some questions about SkillsUSA history and things like that. If I change the score type to look at professional test, now I can do the same thing. Oh, shoot. Why is it not working? Darn it. Oh, I know why. Because I forgot to load contestants. After I did that, I got to hit this load contestants button again because I just added all that. Now let me go back. Yeah, there we go. Now if I go back and look at which one was it? Commercial baking we were looking at. So here's the two people competing in commercial baking. What did they get on their professional test? Make sense so far? Now, if you've got a couple of hundred or perhaps a couple of thousand people taking this test, it could be very, very, very time consuming to go through each contest and type these in. So one of the things we've built so far, and again, this is all sort of still in progress, but the concept so far is you can export a template to contain the results for that professional development test. And when I click that button, it's going to give me an Excel file and ask me where I want to put it. I'm going to put it there in that folder. And now if I go look in that folder, I've got a file called PDT template. If I open it up, here's what that looks like. it tells me what's the event, what's the contest, what's the contestant number, what's the access code. We're going to come back and talk about that access code in a minute. The participant ID, first name, last name, maximum number of points available, and what's the score. So you can, today, you could use this to go in this Excel file and put in those scores for whatever it was you wanted to give each kid, what they got. Ideally, this wouldn't really be done manually, right? This would be done with some sort of a file. You'd have them take the test online, whatever, and then load the data into this exact template, whatever this exact template is, right? And then, let me just say this, I'm going to come back to it in a second. That's what this import button does. The import button says, all right, I've got that template, I've got all my results in it. Let me import those results so that I don't have to type all this stuff in. And once you do that, remember how we saw earlier when I import one of these contests, it said, hey, there's already online tests. It'll do the same thing for professional tests. It'll say, hey, you have some professional test results. Would you like to append to them so your tech cheers don't have to type all that stuff into Excel? Conceptually, at a high level, is this concept making sense where you could have them take the exam some other place, maybe Scantron, maybe whatever, and put them in after the fact so that your tech cheers are not having to type these into the Excel file? Conceptually, does that make sense? I feel like I might have put you guys all to sleep now. If I go look at pen design, I have a row in this Excel for professional test, but I do not want my guy to type anything in here because that professional test is going to be scored by some online system. I picked a terrible one because there's so many things here, but you get the idea. Oops. Let me just show you real quick what this will look like. Ah, come on. This is a pain. All right, that gives me something anyway. This was pen design. Let me go back here and put in some professional test scores for pen design. And let's say when they took that professional development test, the kids did fairly well on them, but they were all over the map. Now when I import that pen design contest, it's going to ask me that same question and say, hey, there's 8 online or professional test batch scores. Do I want to append them? Yes, I do want to append them. And now whatever score they got is appended, and it affects who got gold, silver, and bronze. So the place where this whole professional test concept, where I want to take it, now this is it's not pie in the sky, but it's a little bit of a stretch right now because I got to get clarity from Jim and Dave Warden and those guys that this is an okay approach. Where I think we want to take this is I want to enable you guys to use this Excel file. Let me go back to Excel and get that file open. I want to enable you to use this access code and event to provide a way for your students to take this professional test online with a computer or a laptop or an iPad or potentially even their phone, take it online and immediately export the results that you could just load into this thing. So what I'm envisioning is a way where you as the state directors could say, I want to use this professional test platform on the website, and you export this Excel file. Well, you saw how I did it. I just clicked a button and this came out. You go to the website and upload this, and by uploading this, the website now knows, here's your event, your whatever it is, your Oklahoma State Skills Conference or your Nevada, whatever it is. And we know your contest, and we know your contestants, and each contestant has a code that is made up of, if you notice what this is made up of, it's very simple. It is their first and last initial and their contestant number. So remember, assuming you've used state style numbering, these contestant numbers are unique. Contestant number 1086 is Andrea Cabrera, and there isn't another 1086. So if Andrea Cabrera, or Andrew, whatever his name is, Andrew Cabrera has on his name tag 1086, and he knows his name is Andrew Cabrera, we could design a website where that kid could go on his phone, and once you enable it, you as a state director have to turn this on and off, you could enable and say, you know what, from 9 a.m. on Monday to 12 p.m. on Monday, just before lunch on Monday, every kid's going to go take this test. You get them all in a big room and don't even tell them you're doing this until you have them all in a room. Whip out your phones, go to this website, type in your event ID. You just tell them our event ID is 2153. And type in your access code. Andrew, your access code is AC1086. When Andrew types that in, he gets on his phone or laptop or PC, whatever, he gets the professional development test. It asks him the 25 questions, all randomized and sorted just for him. It's not the same sequence as Mason sitting next to him, so they can't cheat. And when he submits it, you get his score in this Excel file when you export it from the website. Take that data right over to SkillsUSA, import it, and you instantly have all that stuff available right in here. Now this is where I really do need some feedback. I need to know if you guys think this is a crazy idea, or this is like, wow, that would save me a lot of time, or I don't even know what you're talking about, Mark. Can we go back to how you made the Excel file? Man, I sure hope you guys can still hear me. Anybody? No? Oh, here we go.
Hey, Mark, are you able to see the chat questions?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I was so paying attention to what I was doing, I didn't read over there. So Darren says, thank you. Looks like the PD tests were great. Karen says, what if a student is entered in more than one contest and has two contestant numbers? So this is a really good question. These are some of the things that we've thought through that I think we have solutions for, but I do want to run them by you. So to the question about a student entered in more than one contest, if I go look at a particular student who is actually in more than one contest, notice this kid, Emily Agnew, she is in two different design contests, but they're both individual contests, 1326. And so her number's the same. And so if I go look in the Excel file for Agnew, she's in here and her code is EA1326. Technically she's in here twice, but my understanding is she would only take the test once. And whatever score she gets on that test, that's the score that would apply to both of her contests. And we've programmed the system to be smart enough to know that and to take that code, her result, 35 points, and put them on both t-shirt design and pin design. Now, if for Teamworks, this is where it's a little trickier. If I look at Teamworks is a team event, and all 4 kids on team D would take the test. And our theory, operating theory so far as to how we would do this is, there's only going to be, if I go look at the Excel file for Teamworks, this is the way all these works. Whatever the scoring rules are, they get one score for plumbing, and 1 score for order efficiency, and 1 score for deconstruction, and 1 tool for tool return, and they get 1 score for professional test. So even though if I look in the spreadsheet for Teamworks, I see these kids are all on the same team. Notice their contestant number is all the same. They have different codes, BC 7131 and CG 7131 and JD 7131. Each kid could take the exam. 1 kid did great, 1 kid did really great, 1 kid did horrible. What the system is designed to do is average that. And it would say, well, all 4 kids took the exam and their average score is going to be 25.3. And so 25.3 is what would get added to the professional test for Team D into the results. It seems like that's the most palatable way to make that work, since that's how everything else works. You know, they get an average score for deconstruction, an average score for extensive completion, whatever. So we just average their test score as well. Now, there are some things about it that may get a little dicey. One of those being, well, what if you just happen to have, and this could happen, 7135, but I've got Bryce Carmen, and the second contestant's name was Billy Klein or Billy Carson, right? So his code, both their codes are going to be BC, and this is a potential snag. They both have exactly the same code. We're not going to have a great way to know which kid's score was which. I don't have exactly that detail worked out yet, but I think that's a pretty small edge case, and it would only impact averages. And so I'm not 100% sure how we're going to deal with that, but I don't want to derail the whole thing because of a 5% edge case. The other potential edge case that I think we're still struggling with just a little bit is how to handle is, what if a kid is competing in one professional event and one team event and one non-team event? He has 2 different contestant numbers. And so right now I'm leaning towards, in that case, you want to tell the kid to take the test twice. He could take it and get his average for one school and his own school score for his individual one. So it would have, that student would have 2 scores. I don't know exactly if that's the way we're going to do it or not. Those are some of the things that we're struggling with in terms of nailing down some of those edge cases. And that's why I say this concept is under development. I wanted to run it by you guys and get your thoughts on it and see if it sounded like conceptually it would work or not. I think it'll work. I would love for somebody to volunteer to be the guinea pig to try to try it and see. I mean, I can test it all day long and see how it works, and it feels great, but we need somebody to say, you know what, this professional test thing, having it working as part of a skill, let's give it a try and see what happens. Just kind of looking back through the chat window, I see Melissa asked a question earlier, can you run the award sequence prior to entering scores? Yes, you probably do want to do that. You'd run the award sequence list really whenever you want. You can set this thing up anytime you want. As soon as you get the data, you can set this award sequence up. And if you don't like it, you can fiddle with it, change them around, whatever you want to do there. All right. We may come back to this professional development thing. I've got a list down here that says check YouTube for a professional test walkthrough. Once we have that all finalized and working, I'll put together a video of how that works and walk through it on YouTube. I would love to get feedback on how that works and what your thoughts are about it. And then once we get the website configured to enable it as well, I'll have another video about how the website walkthrough will work. I think we've got most everything except some of those edge cases worked out pretty well. The reason we're doing this, and this is sort of Darren, when you said you were going to try and do something like this because National was moving this way, it got me kind of worried, because one thing that has gotten some states into just piles of trouble with this CMS platform is when you go run some external contest, some external test, even the online test, and you don't get contestant numbers in it, then what you end up with is either a Scantron or some class marker printout that has, you know, just kids' names on it. And then you're trying to figure out, well, how in the world am I going to type 700 different scoring results into this system and all I have is the names? We've tried hard to make it fairly easy to do with the, you know, with the online test, because like if I choose pen design, let me choose, like even criminal justice, you can sort this in a variety of ways, by first name, by last name, but it's very, very tedious to say, well, give me the printout from class marker for criminal justice that's sorted alphabetically by last name. And then it's doable, right? You can have somebody sit there and read off, all right, give me the score for Albaran, give me the score for Bixman, give me the score for Hernandez, give me the score for Albanon, and you just type them all in. It's certainly doable, but it's very, very tedious. And the place where states get themselves in trouble is if they don't have time. Like your award ceremony starts at 6, and at 2 p.m. somebody comes and brings you this printout of 200 pages of class marker junk, and you're like, well, how am I going to type in 200 pages in the next hour and a half? You're not. It's just not going to happen. You're either going to have to throw out those tests, or you're going to have to find a way to do it with Excel. This feature for online tests does work with Excel, but you got to get your content into, you know, into this particular format to make it work. So I'm just trying to avoid a nightmare scenario there where you're frantically trying to get ready for your awards ceremony and somebody says, all right, we just took the professional test on class marker. Here's the printout of 112 pages. Good luck typing all that in. You just won't have time. All right, enough of that. Let me move back to our PowerPoint here and see. I think we've covered most of this stuff. Excel, you guys are familiar with judge tabs, importing the scorecards. We looked at that. I kind of want to bounce down here and see what questions you have. I want to make sure on this one, I think you guys have already archived your events from last year. Just be sure, if you haven't done that already, archive your event before you open it for new registrations for this spring. Also, if you last year, if you ran your state event and you know people changed around their scoring rules quite a bit, you can send us your last year's data file and we can use that to refresh the scoring rules online. If I go back online, this is here, right? If I, whoops, let me log on this. Oh man, where's my, if I go back to Oklahoma and look at my scoring rules, those scoring rules for the state leadership and skills conference, you know, if you've changed them, you can just change them here. But if you don't want to mess with that, if you'd rather just say, man, Mark, I would rather you just replace everything I've got online with whatever I used last year, send me the data file from last year, and I can replace all the scores online with however you finished last year up. If you don't do that, it's not a big deal. It's just you're going to get whatever's online this year. Like, so if we export this year, for example, audio, radio, production, post-secondary has no scoring rules. So that's what you're going to get in the Excel. Maybe you spent hours fixing all that in the skill point in the system last year. You don't want to lose all that. So just send it to me and we can do it. The question about the contestant numbers, I think, I don't think the contestant numbers are going to be a problem. I'm pretty confident we have that worked out. Remember that Agnew person. If I sort this by last name, Agnew, she must be at the bottom. Agnew, where is she? Oh, well, she would have 2 scoring. Maybe that's not a good example. Let me find somebody else. Donaldson, here we go. Jeremy Donaldson, shoot, he's on a team. And so this is the edge case where he's got 2. I'm not going to have any good examples here to share. Yeah, here we go. Danny Iabicki. He's in 2 different contests, but his contestant number is 1128 in both of them. So he only has to take the professional test once. We'll take that score and spread it out to 2 or 3 or 5 contests, however many he's in. He takes the test once, and the system is smart enough to take that 24 points and spread it out across all of his contests. Like I said, the only thing that's a potential snag is the case where a person is in a team event and a non-team event. That's a little dicey. I still got to think about that one. Let's see. Anyway, if you have that data, send it to me. I can refresh that for you, and you'll be good. If you, in terms of support for this spring, if you haven't sent me your document yet that says what kind of level of support you want, you should do that right away because we are almost booked up solid. I think we might be able to squeeze one more conference in, but we are going to be maxed out this year, I can tell. What other ideas or suggestions or questions or features would you like to have, or things you've thought of that you wish this thing did that you don't think it does yet, or you're not sure it does, or you're wondering if it does? How do you make individual scorecards? So let me go back over here on, so the scorecards, there's really 2 ways to create them. One is if I'm on a particular contest, like let's say I'm on job interview and I got these 3 kids in it and those are my scoring rules. One other thing I thought you might like to use here, remember at the NLSC event, we always like to have some extra blank rows in that file. I'm going to click this button that says append 3 blank scoring rules, and it'll just instantly add 3 rows to this. So just in case I give this to my judge and he says, man, I sure wish I had an extra row to type in one more thing. Well, now he has 3 extra rows. He can put whatever he wants on it. And I hit this little floppy disk button. It will create the Excel file. Ooh, wait a minute. I don't want to do that one. It says a preliminary, and I don't want it to be a preliminary. Did you notice that error? It's not an error. It says, hey, this is a preliminary. You sure you really know what you're doing? No, it's not a preliminary. I'm going to switch it back to point ranked. Now it's point ranked. So now when I create the Excel file, that little floppy disk button will just create one Excel file at a time. And that's certainly a good way to do it. But the other thing that a lot of people end up wanting to do is do them in batch. And in batch, I'm going to click this refresh button and it'll just refresh this list. So all my contests are ready to go. I can then say, I want to create, like, for example, all my contests that start with the letter F. This is a stupid arbitrary example, but if I said every contest that starts with the letter F, I want to put them on one USB stick, because all those F contests, or maybe they're all their health contests or whatever it is, they're all being handled off-site over on the south side of town. I'm going to put them all on one USB stick and send them over there. You can use this batch method to say, hey, go create them all one at a time. And it'll say, it'll ask me some questions here. I'm just going to keep saying yes now. It's because, yeah, all right, we'll put in the stick for firefighting, and it's going to go create firefighting. And once it's done with that, it's going to say, okay, well, now put in the stick for a first date. I'm just going to leave the same stick in because I want all my F contests to start with letter F to go off the same spot. And now if I go look at that stick, they all come out at the same time. I only happen to have one, but you get the idea. It would all be there. Let's see. If a judge doesn't score on a certain standard and failed to inform me, does the judge need to leave blank or fill it with 0? Okay, great question. Whoop, let me get that firefighting one open here. So this one has judge tabs. We haven't really talked much about judge tabs yet, but you notice there's tabs along the bottom, one for each judge. And what we like to do is we like to not see any colors here at all. So if I put in some scores, now these bottom two, I don't know, maybe I'm going to do the written test online, maybe I'm not, whatever I'm going to do with all that, right? We talked about that. Professional test, maybe I tell them, hey, we're using this class marker, we're using this new website to do that, so just leave that one blank. But the rest of these, I really like to see a color. Whenever I see a color, it always makes me nervous, right? So if a judge didn't score, I'm going to see pink there, and as soon as I see that, I'm going to say, wait a minute, why is this? If I look at the totals tab, it's red. Why do you have no scores here, Judge? What happened? And he's either going to say, that kid was so terrible, he couldn't raise and ladder, he couldn't do forcible entry, he couldn't do any of that stuff. He gets 0. The system will work either way. The system will interpret blanks as 0s, but the problem I have with it is, as the technical chair, I don't know why those 0s are there. I would rather you type in a 0. It shows up as little dashes just because of the way Excel's formatting works. But if I see the dash, I know the judge intentionally put a 0 in there. And maybe using the comments feature, I even ask the judge to type in a comment that says, student could not even lift the ladder. He got no point. Or anything related to the ladder thing, whatever that is, right? Now, on the totals thing, I just see those 0s, and I'm like, hey, you know, I can verify as I'm chatting with the judge. What's the deal, man? And he says, well, it's right there. It's easy. He couldn't lift the ladder. He got no points. Okay. But if I don't see that, it makes me nervous because I don't know why. Did you just forget? The judge might say, oh, no, I totally forgot to type in the score for this kid. And when I glance at it, I see that and think, wait a minute. Why did this kid do real well everywhere and he got no score and you didn't give me any comment? And as the tech chair sitting there, he looks over his paperwork and says, oh, you're right. I just was in a hurry. I forgot to type in the points. That kid got 79 points. And that could be the difference between gold and bronze for a kid. So you want to, I prefer to tell them, put a 0 in everywhere. Don't just leave it blank. Some of these, if I put in a real small number, it'll turn kind of teal blue. That just tells me, man, you did really, really low, less than 25% of the possible points. But that's okay. I don't care about that. I just know that was a very low point. I may ask, I may say, hey, man, did this kid really only get 2 points when everybody else got 60 or 70 points for it? And the teacher may say, or the judge may say, oh, you're right. I'm so sorry. When I go back and look at my paper, I meant to type 72. I just fat fingered it. It was supposed to be 72. Right? So that's why we have those color coding. And I would just suggest eyeballing each of these to look for the results and ask the tech chair, hey, do you know what you're doing here? One other thing I always recommend about this, remember the judges can change one of these rules, right? If they say, hey, guess what? I don't know what the heck CPAT time is, but let's say during their contest, they said, you know, our CPAT machine totally broke, and so we couldn't do the CPAT time event at all. Well, you have the option, the judge does, to change this to say, well, let's say, how did they do it water pressure instead? Water pressure adjustment, turning the water up and down pressure-wise, whatever, I don't know. But that's different than the totals page, and the totals page is the one we import. So we're always looking for ways to make this better, and eventually we may find a way to automate that update. But right now, if I don't copy this over, I'm going to bring in the word CPAT time because it didn't change on the judge tab, even though it did change here. So I always like to just kind of grab that thing, and if I notice something different, I'll just copy it from here and paste it on the totals page so that we don't lose the fact that they did that. We would love to find a way to make this happen automatically. I just haven't figured that out yet. What else? Printable scorecard by contestant with not all the contestants. Let me save that, dude. I think that answered your question, Melissa. Kelly or Amy's question, printable scorecard by contestant, not with all contestants. Yeah, so the printable scorecard, if I go back to, I think it's under scoring. Nope, under contest, where is it? Yeah, here we go. Contest judge scoring sheets. You can choose on here a single contest. So I'm going to choose the one called contest judge scoring sheets. And then on the advanced selection tab, I say, well, the only one I really want, I need to just print the one for building maintenance. That's the only one I want. And when I preview it, of course I would pick one where there aren't any rules or whatever. Hold on a minute. What? Well, something's quite wrong. All right, so I gotta fix something here. There must be something wrong with this because it should do that. Here we go. This one did it. I'm going to jot down a note here because that must be something wrong. Contest judge. That must be something wrong with that one. But you saw how I did it here. If I choose this one, contest judge scoring single sheets, I pick whichever contest I want, childhood education, and then when I preview it, I only get that one contest with whatever those rules are. The same thing should work with this other report, contest judge scoring sheets, but apparently there's something wrong here I need to fix because no matter what I do, it says there's no data. Well, no, that one worked. Dang it, I don't know why. Maybe I was just picking a contest that didn't have any rules or something. Contest judge scoring sheets. I pick, let's say, crime scene. Preview it. No, I don't need to rebuild it. Oh, I don't want to see the names, but I do want to see the contested numbers. Well, maybe it's working fine. Yeah, crime scene investigation. I think that answers your question, Amy, but let me know if it doesn't. Is there any future thought to having chairs enter their scores in an online platform instead of using? I asked because my State Department of Ed is not allowing me to use any USB that is not encrypted, and my chairs have trouble opening it. Yeah. So here's what I would say, Kelly. Your State Department of Education is only letting you do that on a state-issued laptop, and there's two suggestions I would say. One is you don't have to use the USB sticks to do this, right? You could generate the Excel files. You can say here, I don't want to use, I'm going to set my maintenance thing so that my disk letter path is my own hard drive, the C drive. I'm going to put them all on my C drive and I'm going to email. I'm going to email them. I don't want to use a stick. I'm going to email. And then when they email them back to you, you can just save them somewhere on your hard drive and import them from there. So you don't have to use USB sticks. However, I find the USB sticks far easier for people to deal with and conceptualize and put their scores on and pass around. The issue I think, Kelly, you're having is your State Department of Education won't let you use USB sticks on state-issued laptops. And I'm just telling you the simplest, easiest fix is to go to Sam's Club and buy a $500 laptop or you can buy the cheapest laptop you can find. It'll run this system and use a non-state issued laptop. This question about doing all the scoring and entry online and on iPads has come up, and at some point we may investigate that, but so far there's not been enough pressure to move away from USB sticks to justify the cost of building a whole online platform. And the flip side of that also is, if you move everything to online and you can only type your scores in online, then whatever conference environment you're in has to have basically free high-speed Wi-Fi for everyone. And most hotels, conference centers, whatever I've talked to, the state director say, well, geez, the place wants $10,000 just to let me have Wi-Fi here. So we're not doing that. So the easiest, cheapest solution, Kelly, is just buy a non-state laptop and you're done. The other option is use, email and or Google Drive or something to do it too. That may be easier. Melissa's other question about, will we have any issues if the contest totals do not equal 1,000? Absolutely not. Nothing's going to break anywhere if all your contests are 1,050 or 900, or who cares what the points are. The national office has standardized over the past few years so that at NLSC, every contest, outside of Quiz Bowl, every contest we push really hard to say it's got to be 1,000 points. So if we end up doing this professional testing and it's 50 points, we will change something else. So maybe effectiveness is only 150 as well. Everything will change to keep the national at 1,000. So in theory, it's probably best long-term if states try and stay at 1,000 or close to 1,000 so that everybody's sort of on the same page, and your judges, your students, your advisors, you're thinking of and expecting, I'm going to judge on 1,000 points. But the system does not care at all. It could be 100 points. It could be 10,000 points. Who cares? Nothing matters. It's just trying to follow the standard that NLSC has set. That's all that means. The other thing I mentioned about email, I have seen some states, like I said, the USB thing, we're probably not going to be able to get away from anytime soon. But one thing that a lot of states end up having trouble with is, I don't want to deal with this USB stick because all my cosmetology or maybe all my health related things are happening at some health college, on the outside of town, 15 miles away. And I don't want to drive all the way over there and take them these USB sticks. So what Maryland and some other states have done is they said, you know what, I'm going to take those files. I'd make USB sticks for everything. But all my health ones, I'm just going to email just those to the guy over there at Cat North or whatever the town, city, whatever it is where they're doing the work. Email them or set up a Dropbox or a Google Drive or whatever you want. Any sort of online platform. Copy those files up to some shared folder on OneDrive or Dropbox or whatever. And tell your guy who's out on the north side of town at the health center, hey, go here, download these files to your laptop and, fill them in with the Excel things, then drop them back up in Dropbox or whatever you want. Email them back to me. I've seen some states set up a cheap little Gmail, it's free, a free Gmail address called Maryland SkillsUSA results or MD results at gmail.com or whatever, and say, hey, email your results back here. And so they don't have to drive the USB stick all the way back across town. They just email them to you, put them in Dropbox or put them in a Google shared folder or whatever. Dozens of different options for not having to physically carry a USB stick around. But if all your stuff is in one place, all in one conference center, all in one big convention center, hotel, whatever, a school, it's super easy to just hand out those USB sticks and your judges bring them back when they're done. The other thing I've seen some states use to great effect is if you have tech chairs who don't want to type stuff into Excel, they say, I didn't bring a laptop. Just set up a couple laptops next to your scoring room. That's what we do at NLSC. We've got 4 or 5 laptops sitting there in the scoring area, where when tech chairs come back, if they say, here's my results, I didn't put them in Excel because I don't have a laptop, we say, well, there's a laptop, sit down, we'll help you type them in, because you really want them to do that typing and get that stuff saved on the stick. So it's super easy for you to bring them in rather than you or your team having to type all that stuff in. All right, we're down to the last 10 minutes. We've had a lot of great questions. I think we've covered them all. But we've got a few minutes for some extra questions as well, if anybody has any that they wanted to ask about. I'm going to try and keep an eye on the chat window. So feel free to chat in there or unmute yourself and just ask a question. I'm going to keep stepping through a couple things in my PowerPoint deck here, just in case you're curious about how to set this up on a network. At NLSC, of course, we set up a local area network with 12 PCs or so on it, and this system works fine there, where each PC has a copy of the program database, and the data database is shared on one of the PCs. It's not even a server, it's just some laptop sitting there that nobody touches. It's just, this is the laptop that hosts the data, and each PC connects to that over the network, and you can have 5 or 6 people working in the system all at once. The only caveat to that, I guess 2 caveats I would say. One is you need to get a wired connection for this. Don't hope that your hotel Wi-Fi will work. It will not work. You will run into data corruption, and it just will not work. I'm sure of it. So don't try to use the hotel's Wi-Fi to do this. Just get a cheap little router switch. Have some network guy from one of your network, Cisco classes or whatever, come just run a half dozen wires through a switch to one PC, and you've got it made. It's super easy for a network guy to do this for you. Take him 10 minutes. You can buy all this equipment for under $100. And then you can have 4 or 5 computers all doing this at the same time. Just don't use hotel Wi-Fi. And then the second caveat I would add is, it's very helpful to have 4 or 5 computers to like print name tags for kids and make changes. When it comes to typing scores into Excel, you don't need to be on a laptop for that. You can have the laptops disconnected. When it comes to importing the scores, even if you do have the computers on a network, you only want to import one at a time. You'll just run into errors. It won't break anything. It's not like it's going to ruin your data, but you'll just run into lots and lots of errors if you try and do an import of the scorecard on 2 or 3 computers at once. You just want to say, I've got one computer that does the import, or be very, very careful about taking turns. You can use 2 computers. Like at NLSC, I'll do one computer and James will do another computer, and we're just very careful. If I'm importing one, he's not. Or if he is, I am not. So we very carefully coordinate taking turns for who's doing the import. But it works great on a network if you have one set up. Not a big deal at all. Can't remember if I didn't talk about this, I don't think, but do remember, once your event is over, if you want us to post your scores, you just export that information and send them to us. We can get the scores posted online for you pretty quick and easy. There's a report you'll want to run to make sure everybody knows what the date of birth their advisor typed in for them, because you got to have your date of birth and your contestant number to get those results. The master contestant list by school tells you that. You just give that to your advisors, so when they call you, they don't have to call you saying, well, I put in the wrong date of birth, the kid doesn't know how to get his scores. You tell them, well, go look at the report I gave you, because that will tell you what date of birth you put in there as the advisor when you screwed up the data entry. And then they can get their scores. And we never take those scores offline. So these scores for both medalists and detailed scores are out there forever. So we've got some out there from 2014, 2012. We got, for states going back years and years and years. Oklahoma's goes way back. So we never take it down. If some kid graduated back in 2013 and he wants to know how well he did, those scores are always out there. We don't take them down. All right. Still got a couple of folks online. I know maybe a couple of people have had to drop. Any last minute questions? Anything else you want to suggest or ask for or request? Things you wish the thing did or help you need in the next few weeks? All right. I think we're going to wrap up then. If you have questions or ideas or you need help later on, you know how to get a hold of me. Just email support@skillsusa-register.org, and I'm happy to help out anytime. I really appreciate you guys dialing in today and spending these couple hours with me. And we'll look for the video online. You can always look back at it later. Thank you so much, and hope you have a great conference season.